helping you navigate the rocky path of fulfilling employment. Here's our career Sherpa, Julie Bauke.
Sloaney News Radio 700 WLW and Julie on the AcuteHearingCenters.com hotline this morning. Coach Alan Koch fired by FC Cincinnati yesterday after 3 seasons. When you go scoreless in like 5 games, Julie, when you don't put the ball in the net for 5 consecutive games, generally you're not going to keep your job very long, especially when you turn around and blame the front office and the players for sucking. Usually that's a sign of things to come here. But what if you are not putting the ball in the proverbial net in your workplace, and you are shown the door, either because you see it coming or you don't see it coming, whether you're Alan Koch or anyone else for that matter. I've been employed. I've been fired before many times. I expect me to be fired soon here from the show, quite honestly. And I know the stages you go through. I'm an expert being in radio, the stages that you go through when it comes to being fired. Talk about getting fired and how to deal with it.
So let's make sure we're talking about Alan and still not talking about Seg, right?
Seg, it's amazing. I'm going to get fired before Seg will. That's the best part about this.
No, you can't get fired. I will be homeless.
I don't know.
On Wednesday mornings at 10:30.
Yeah, you'll be talking to yourself.
You know, here's the thing about getting fired. In my experience of 20-some years, in a lot of times working with people who lost their job through no fault of their own, the crazy thing is the vast majority of them end up saying the organization did them a favor.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when we get to the point where it's not working, we know it, but we don't want to admit it, or we don't want to be the ones to say, I'm done here. And so we wait for somebody else to take action. And that is the case in probably, I'm going to say, 75% of the people I've worked with. And so we don't always feel that way immediately. But generally, within the first month or two, we're like, okay, once I get over all those emotions that you talked about that we can go into, when you have a little bit more of a clear head, you can look around and say, you know what, that was not the best place for me to be successful in the way I want to be successful. And that's kind of a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but it's really very healthy because we're not meant to stay in one place forever.
Right. And because you get complacent, there's a whole bunch of things. You feel like you're being taken advantage of. The company also probably looks at it as like, this guy's been here too long, and we're not seeing the productivity out of what he or she does with their department, whatever it might be that you're in. And so it's a mutual kind of thing that I think kind of works against you at some point. When it comes to this, should we just assume that at some point, all of us, regardless of where you work, what you do, unless, of course, you're self-employed, is you're going to wind up getting fired? So should we just plan for going, okay, what would happen if I came in today and they said, we don't need you anymore?
Yes, I say that often. What would you do if on Monday you showed up and they said, thank you for your service, here's a cardboard box,
here's your severance.
Right, your severance, your whatever. We're looking for a different set of skill sets moving forward. And in this case, FC Cincinnati just moved up to a different league. That may require a different type of leadership or just a different type of skill and experience set. And sometimes it's not that you're bad. It's just that the organization wants something different, not necessarily even better. Sometimes just different or better for that culture or better for the moment they are in. But we take it also personally, and I get that because it is personal because, your paycheck just stops. And so it affects you personally. But often, in fact, many, many cases, it is not a personal decision. It's more a reflection of what the leadership of the organization or your department have decided they need moving forward. It still feels bad, but, if you can kind of step back and try to look at it objectively, you don't have to like the decision, but now you get to decide what you do moving forward. And you get to go find something that's a better fit for who you are.
Yeah, and I think, Julie Bauke, that's the thing is, you kind of got to be situationally aware. I mean, sometimes it happens. You're like, here's a company we're doing. All of a sudden they go, you know what? We decided to eliminate this particular brand or product or whatever division is you're working in or project. We don't need you anymore because we don't want to do that. Change of direction from the top down. You go, wow, I didn't see that coming. Other times you say, hey, you know what? I know we're going to get bought. We're getting shopped around. There's going to be an acquisition or a merger. bigger. And then they start to look at duplicity and go, okay, well, the big company, the bigger fish already has 3 people doing my job. Am I going to fold in, or are they just going to assume my duties? And if you're asking yourself that question, you damn well know the answer to it. You're going to go away. So what are you doing now to prepare for that day when they said we don't need you anymore? And I think if you do that ahead of time, right, is now no one wants to do it. It's kind of like planning for your own death, right? Who likes to sit down and go, well, I need a will or life insurance? People don't do that because they don't like to think of their mortality. Right. Isn't this the same thing?
It is. It really is. It's knowing that every time you get your paycheck, you're even. And you've been paid for what you've done to date. And you have to ask yourself, just like the company's asking itself or your leader's asking him or herself, do we want to re-up for another 2 weeks? Do we want to re-up? Do we want to keep this going? Because it really is a voluntary relationship on both sides.
Sure.
And we act like, even though, this drives me crazy, even though we have seen since the 90s wholesale layoffs happen, 2008, there was muscle and bone cuts, not just that. We still walk around thinking that we're indispensable, and that if we lose our jobs, after all the loyalty I've shown, well, guess what? Stop that. You have to be loyal to yourself and your career first, and you always have to operate with integrity. And you want to do what you're being paid to do. You have to do that. That's the contract, quote unquote.
Right.
But in terms of, I did a good job, therefore I'm guaranteed, and these clowns next to me are going to go, we all know it doesn't always work that way. And so having an answer to, what if they came to me tomorrow and said, you don't need to come back, we're moving in a different direction, am I ready? And ready is, have you given any thought to what's next for you? What do you want more of or less of that you're not getting in your present role? Mm-hmm. Is your resume and LinkedIn profile up to date? Do you have a network that you're actively connecting with? Or do you just reach out to people when you need something? We're all in play at all times, and we have to operate that way. It's healthy. And it also opens you up for opportunity that comes your way that you maybe didn't even know you were looking for.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's how it works right there. Julie Bauke, our Career Sherpa on the Scott Sloan Show, News Radio 700 WLW, talking about getting fired like Alan Koch. Many other people, let's face it, there's going to be people listening today that are going to lose their job by the end of the week. That's the nature of it. The good news is you can find another job or 2 or 3 tomorrow, and that opportunity has never been greater today. You are in demand. So the chances of you getting fired are probably fairly slim, but let's face it, in the coming few months or years as the economy turns, maybe not so much, unless of course your job is to score goals and you're not doing that. Then for 5 consecutive games, you're probably going to wind up being out of a job. The other thing too is the emotional baggage of this thing. And let's say you work at a company for 15, 20, 30 years, which seems unlikely, but that's the case. Is having gone through this myself in places worked for like a year or two, and you go initially there's the shock because you don't want to think it's coming, but it's coming, and then you're dismissive in the sense that you go, well, you know what, these guys can't live without me. Wait till they come crawling back to me. So you got this fantasy dreamland going on, and then when you realize that. After about the first week, when your office mates and the guys you worked with are no longer calling you every day going, oh, it sucks, man, you got screwed, and now you're not hearing from people anymore, you go into this anger stage, like the hell with all these guys, and then soon thereafter, when the phone isn't ringing or you're not getting inbound and bombarded with job offers, that's when depression sets in. Those are the cycles: shock, dismissiveness, anger, depression. Am I missing anything? Denial's good.
Grief. Really grief. It's a huge loss. And the thing is, there are all these stages of loss, and job loss is a big one. It's like, in a lot of cases, it's like a divorce and losing a spouse. It's way up there. And so you're going to go through some level of those stages probably, but not necessarily in a linear fashion. You're going to go maybe back from anger to depression to grief to optimism to, I'm going to be great. This is great. And then the phone calls aren't returned as fast as you want them to, or you go on an interview or two and you don't get the job. And all of a sudden you can go from, I feel great, to no one's ever going to hire me again. And sometimes in 5 minutes. And that's what's so scary about it, is it really is a roller coaster. And, I tell our clients, you just got to know that going in, and you have to embrace it. You can't live in anger or grief, and you also can't live in determined optimism, Because if you are, you're probably stuffing down some emotions that you need to feel. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad and depressed, but don't string together too many of those days,
right,
or you'll end up living there.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, finally, Julie, is when this happens, and it seems like it happens to everybody, and you're probably lucky if it doesn't, but it's amazing how much I think the worst part probably if you get paid like severance typically, and if it's a longer severance, you've been there a while, it's like a non-compete. A lot of people have non-competes, meaning that you can't work for anyone else in that industry until either you find a job and then your payments from the old company stop, or you run out of time and your company stops paying you for not working. In that interim period, it's kind of like limbo for a lot of people. Like, well, I don't know. They're paying me, but I'm not working. I surely can be productive. And man, my yard has never looked better. My house has never been cleaner, but there's only so much of that you can do.
Exactly.
What should you be doing during that idle time if that's you?
Yeah, I recommend a blend. So even if you decide to get on your job search very quickly, you really can't do a job search 40-plus hours a week. You will burn out so fast.
Right.
Even if you worked 60 hours a week, doing a job search 40 hours a week is a whole different animal. So I recommend a blend. So first thing you want to do is start gathering your information to get your resume and your LinkedIn profile together. But you have to, because you can't do a steady diet of that, work in the yard, go for a walk, work out, read, play with kids, take the kids to their activities. Do some of the things that you were always complaining that you never had time to do while you were working. Blend them together. It's the healthiest way to go. 40-plus hours a week of job search is going to not make you an attractive candidate because you're going to have that look in your eyes. But also 40 hours a week of leisure, 40-plus hours a week of doing nothing but the stuff you want to do is really easy to slip into, and it's going to hurt your job search. So take a few days, go on a vacation. If you can afford it, go for a long weekend, or just take a few days to, feel sorry for yourself, and then pick back up and put yourself on some sort of routine. But give yourself permission to sit in the yard, to read, to go out with friends, to do that stuff, because believe me, that's the stuff that will keep you mentally healthy and ready for a search. Because search is tough. I don't care who you are and where you are and how talented you are. It's a tough process, and so your job is to keep yourself sharp and focused for the search.
Julie Bauke, we'll leave it at that. The BaukeGroup.com, Bauke, Julie Bauke, our career Sherpa here on the Scott Sloan Show. She's Cincinnati's top job coach. Thanks again for joining. We'll talk next week.